Good evening and welcome to the second presentation of the 2023-2024 season of AvCan Canada's webinar series. Winter's coming and we're excited to be sharing some great presentations with you this season. My name is Sarah Taylor and I'm your producer for the evening. Amy Irving's also online and she'll be a moderator and looking out for any questions you might have in the Q&A box. Thanks for joining us tonight. For 3 years now, we've presented a variety of webinars and we love being online. It means we can share avalanche safety messaging with so many more of you than before. We're glad you could join us this evening and we'd love to see you share these webinars with others who might find them useful. Our mission is to help educate backcountry users so you can go out and play safe. We want you to know more, go further and come home every time. First, we would like to acknowledge that our session is being hosted on the territory of 4 nations, the Sinixt, Secwepemc, Ktunaxa and Silks. As a national organisation, we also acknowledge the First Nations, Métis and Inuit nations on whose land we live and recreate. Before we start tonight's session, we'd like to thank our sponsors. We're very grateful for our sponsors being loyal to us and their support and for working with us to reach backcountry users this winter. This webinar is supported by the International Snowmobile Manufacturers Association. They're a long-time sponsor of AvCan Canada and help us with snowmobile loaners and purchases for our field teams over the years. Their support has been key to our expansion and to delivering public avalanche safety. I also want to mention before we get going that right now AvCan Canada Foundation have a fundraiser running called Wrap It Up. Prize draw entries are just $20 and you can have a chance to win a 2024 BRP Skidoo Summit Adrenaline Edge 850-165. Proceeds for that go to supporting AvCan, and 10% of those proceeds will be donated to the Al Hodgson Memorial Fund, which supports avalanche education for sledders. We also have some prizes to give away at the end of the session today, so stick around. We have some FXR toques to hand out. A couple of quick housekeeping notes before we crack on. Everyone is automatically muted. You will have opportunity to ask questions throughout the session, and to do so, you can either use the raise hand icon in the bottom of your Zoom screen, or you can use the Q&A box to ask your questions as well. Try not to use the chat box for questions unless we tell you to, just because it can sometimes be hard to see them in that chat box. So questions, Q&A, we might ask you to use the chat box for different purposes throughout the session tonight. Otherwise, you can raise a hand. Tonight's presentation is Stoke Your Approach. Winter's finally started to get here and the Stoke is high. We're all itching to get out there and play in the snow. And we want to set you up for success this evening by giving you a few tips on how to manage that early season enthusiasm and make the most of early winter Stoke. The Stoke's good, but it's important to pair it with good, safe travel habits for a good, strong start to your season. We'll talk about mindset in this presentation and how to match your mindset to the conditions. Our presenter this evening is Ben Hawkins. Ben is the lead field technician for the North Rockies field team based in Prince George, BC, and this is his 5th season with AvCan. He's an avid sledder, skier, and gun dog enthusiast who loves spending time in the mountains. So without further preamble, I'll pass it on to Ben. Enjoy the presentation.
Thank you very much. And yeah, just give me 1 sec. We'll just get my screen going. All righty. We're just going to start our evening right off the bat. We're going to jump into it with a couple of polls, just so we have an idea of who's here, who's listening tonight. And we're going to get Amy to throw out the first poll, which is, where do you ride? Kind of general, but if you get around, just kind of pick your most common one. All right. And then, okay, so it looks like we have a lot of Revelstoke, a bit of the coast, a fair amount of others. So yeah, kind of a good spread. Poll 2 is, how many days out do you usually ride? Just wait for a few more to come in. All right, so we're looking at a lot of that 6 to 12, 13 to 20. I know I feel really lucky. I get to put myself in that more than 30. But that's not, that's not the case. It's hard to get weekends. And then the last poll is just, what's your Abby Savvy training level? How much experience do you have and what kind of courses have you taken? Just get that up. Maybe that one's not going to come. That's right. I'm going to assume you guys are all dialed in this anyway, and that you're just here to listen to me talk for fun. So thanks to everyone who did reply, and thank you and welcome. Let's get going with tonight's presentation. Stoke your approach. This is an image of one of those perfect days in the mountains on a snowmobile where everything comes together. There's deep, powdery snow, sunshine, and low avalanche danger. The days we have to get after it are limited in the season, and the frequency of these days is even less. This presentation is focused on helping you fine-tune your approach to get the most out of your time sledding. And when I say get the most out of your day, it's not just about going as far or as high as possible. It's mostly about choosing terrain based on the given conditions. We'll give you a few strategies to help you tune your approach, or maybe tune your mindsets if you're already using them. Using a terrain mindset is a way we can help rein ourselves in so we don't charge blindly into problems. Have you ever had your dog say, "I'm 90 pounds, I'm pretty tough, and that cat shouldn't be in my yard," only to have it find out what a mess a cornered cat can make? Or maybe you've said, "I'm a good rider, I'm on an 850, I can get through that," only to find yourself shoveling your way out of ever deepening pit. Yeah, if you're wondering, that's me. We all overestimate the situation sometimes. We need a system to help make good decisions and keep us from getting scratched up, smashed up, or worse. We need to have checks and balances out there. I mean, I get it. Your time riding is precious and you want to make the most of it every time you go. With that said, I'm sure we'd all agree the most important thing is coming home to sled another day. There's a time and a place. A bunch of things have to come together to score a picture like this. It needs the right launch point, the right landing, ideal weather, and the right rider's abilities. We can't just go hucking ourselves off of everything and expect this picture will always work out. Staying out of trouble while traveling the backcountry is similar. It's about picking and choosing your battles. In his 2014 ISSW paper, Yin, Yang, and You, regarding strategic mindsets, Roger Atkins suggests that every time you approach a piece of avalanche terrain, you have a decision to make, whether to avoid it, to stop and manage the risk, or to just ride right over it. We use mindset and terrain selection to make these decisions safely and consistently. Today, we're going to discuss this core decision making in a bit more detail. We'll review the daily process as a foundational tool to help support your decision making when traveling in the backcountry. We'll talk a bit about trip planning. We'll look at a set of conditions in a scenario and then choose a riding zone based on these conditions. Afterwards, we will define a terrain mindset as a framework to help you stick to the appropriate slopes or zones on a given day. And finally, we'll incorporate that mindset into our process and return to a couple more terrain-based scenarios. But let's start with a look at the daily process. If you've taken an avalanche skills training course or an AST, this probably looks familiar to you. The daily process helps in decision making by giving you a systematic way to approach your day. The most critical times where we need support for decision making are while planning our day and also while actively moving through the terrain. So this is where we'll focus today's discussion. So what are some of the things you do to prepare for a day of sledding? Hopefully, we start with the facts. What is the avalanche forecast for our day out? Knowing where not to go will help us figure out where we should be. Next, let's decide on what we want to do based on the conditions. Is this a day for shredding powder in the trees, or maybe traveling far and wide, or hitting up the climbs in big terrain? Deciding this takes more than just the avalanche conditions, but includes the weather, riding conditions as well. The trick is to maximize all three of these to go somewhere safe where you can see with the best possible snow, given the conditions, and have a great time riding. Deciding on all these factors and planning is planning in a nutshell, and this can be a complicated process. Let's try it to look at it now with an example of how you might choose terrain and match it to the conditions. I'll walk us through this first scenario, and then later we're going to do some more that I will open to the chat and we'll do kind of together. We're going to check, what does the forecast say about conditions? We'll look at the Mountain Information Network and see if anyone's posted some extra information for us to use. We'll see what we can infer from the forecast about riding conditions. It's pretty general, but if you read between the lines, there's usually some good hints in there. And finally, we'll view images of two terrain pieces and decide where we'd go based on the conditions presented. So as we're looking at it, this is a pretty classic situation. In a lot of people's minds, these conditions will be a free-for-all. Yet there's still probably some places we'll want to avoid. Let's dig into this forecast just a little more. As we flip through the different pages of the forecast, we can see each one adds a little bit of information to the puzzle. There's moderate danger, wind slabs in the Alpine, mixed weather, and strong winds coming. We can also see that there's a blue dot on the map that we can click. Excuse me, that we can click. This indicates that there's a min post up in the area. These crowdsourced conditions reports are something anyone can post, and often contain a few bullets about avalanche, weather, and riding conditions, as well as maybe a short write-up and some good pictures. These are great because we can look at them to validate yesterday's conditions and help us figure out what's going on today for a specific zone. This one kind of confirms our fears about hard wind affected conditions on our day out, but they did find some soft snow in the trees, which is good to know. There's kind of some of the pictures they shared. It doesn't take a lot for these posts to be great, but yeah, just a couple of pictures can be worth a lot. So with what we found out from the forecast and what we found out from the min, we start to get an idea of what the riding conditions are going to be like. Rather than searching through posts on our favorite social media or relying on friends with tall tales about powder, sometimes it's good to just start with some facts. So with this scenario, we'll probably expect things to be kind of hard and windswept in open areas, but there's going to be some good riding tucked away from the wind. We can also expect that scattered flurries will mean the visibility is in and out through the day and make navigating in big open areas kind of hard. So with all that in mind, which zone would we be going to? There's A or there's B. I'll give you guys just a second to kind of consider your answers. We don't need to share them right now, but we will have kind of an opportunity later in some more very similar scenarios. If we're thinking just about avalanche hazard, A, yeah, okay. So we do have one person thinking A given the situations. But if we're thinking just about avalanche hazard, then an argument could be made for either. Both of these areas have zones to be in and zones to avoid. The broad ridge in the front of picture B shouldn't be a problem given the avalanche hazard, but the border slopes that we'd have to be cautious of. Meanwhile, the upper bowl in the top of picture A will have wind slabs developing. But when we add the weather and riding conditions, things become a little easier to picture. That broad ridge is exposed, meaning that safe zones to ride there will be very hard and windswept. Also, that it will be a whiteout during those scattered snowfalls, and avoiding the slopes that have been loaded could be difficult. Meanwhile, picture A has many options to avoid the problem. The small slopes, open trees will be good options regardless of the visibility. In this way, when we take a holistic approach to conditions, considering weather, avalanche, and riding, it helps a lot in planning our trip and picking our zones for a day of riding. Now, I'd like to get into kind of the meat of this, which is mindset. We use mindset every day of our life without even knowing it. We use it how we approach our work days or how we approach our weekends. Is this weekend one to get things done around the house, or maybe it's one to just relax, or maybe it's one to get after it in the mountains? Sports teams use it to shape the way they approach opposing teams. Do they need a defensive mindset or an attacking one? Mindset is used to predetermine our response to various situations. But why terrain? If we consider avalanches as a combination of these four factors, it starts to make sense. Weather, we know, is always changing. It's variable and hard to predict. Snowpack is a direct result of weather across time and space, making it equally out of our control. But if we consider ourselves the trigger, which is the case nearly 90% of the time, we realize that what we can control is how and where we, the trigger, move through avalanche terrain. This management of where we are and what we expose ourselves to is terrain mindset. Terrain mindset as a kind of an idea that is presented as an adaptation of Roger Atkins' strategic mindsets, which are used in the professional avalanche safety world to help professionals set safety margins and keep within their scope of practice. Terrain mindset is a simplified and intuitive version for recreationists presented by Colin Zacharias in his article on Powder Cloud. It consists of, it's been shared if anyone's looking for some extra reading, it's been shared in the chat. It consists of 4 sets of guidelines that help set our goals and limit our use of terrain given certain conditions. They should be easy to adopt into your daily process, and I would argue you probably use them to some extent already. These 4 mindsets, check it out, keep it mellow, step it up, and time it early, are frameworks in which we can plan our day and manage our terrain choices in the field. Choose one of these for the day. Consider it a binding agreement that your group makes to keep within a set safety margin. That said, if you realize while you're verifying conditions in the field that you've underestimated hazard, it's okay to step back to a more conservative mindset, i.e. moving from a step it up to a keep it mellow, or coming off of a time it early to just a check it out. But going the other direction, moving up in our exposures, should be avoided. It's too easy to miss clues and convince ourselves that things are better than they are, or that they are what we want them to be. Instead, stick to the mindset your group chose. Take note of the conditions, and when you reflect on your day later, talk to your crew about why it was different than expected. And if conditions are supposed to remain pretty well the same, consider as a group maybe stepping it up a little tomorrow. But let's take a closer look at what each of these mindsets actually mean. Check it out. This is a low confidence mindset. And I don't mean that as self-confidence, but maybe we're in a new zone. We have a new group of people and we're unsure of our team's abilities, whether that's riding skills, avalanche rescue skills, or just interpreting conditions. Or maybe the conditions themselves are tricky, changing, or we're otherwise unsure of them. We agree to select a zone that offers several options to eliminate exposure to avalanche terrain. Our choices include low angle or primarily forested terrain, and we agree to avoid big overhead slopes. And on days of higher avalanche hazard, we also agree to avoid or minimize the risk of traveling through lower runouts. Our goal in this mindset is to increase our confidence through careful, targeted observations without exposing ourselves to avalanche risks. To put it simple, observe and avoid. This is a really common early season mindset, and I use this a lot in November and December when I'm still figuring out what the snowpack is doing for the year. Also, I'm getting familiar with my favorite spots again, shaking the dust off my equipment and probably my riding skills, as well as adjusting to any new riding partners I'm going out with. Next, we have keep it mellow. Here we have higher confidence in a higher hazard. We are familiar with our group and can identify the avalanche problems and uncertainties that may cause issues. We limit our exposure by avoiding steeper slopes, wind-loaded start zones, or specific trigger spots. Our goal is to create a plan with a range of options that allows us to have fun while maintaining a large margin for error. We're hyper aware that good decision making is needed to avoid avalanches big enough to bury, injure, or kill us. We know that managing exposure requires experience and plan to select a zone where options exist to reduce exposure with careful route finding. When the avalanche problems are difficult to target, we'll choose slopes less than 30 degrees, avoid avalanche hazards or terrain traps. Also, we plan to employ safe travel techniques, such as using spacing, timing, or strategic regroups to further reduce that risk. Then we move into step it up. We have a relatively high confidence in our assessment of the terrain, conditions, and team members, and we have the training and experience to make good decisions in a familiar situation. This mindset assumes a low chance of avalanches with no persistent slab or wind slab problems. We are aware that these factors, combined with a forecast for good visibility, are fundamental to managing avalanche risk in steep, open terrain or in complex terrain with multiple avalanche paths and terrain traps. We know this type of terrain may have limited options to reduce exposure once we've committed. Our goal is to recreate in bigger terrain and consider steeper options mindfully during these periods when human and naturally triggered avalanches are neither expected nor reported. It's important that our team members agree that it's an appropriate day to venture out into more exposed avalanche terrain, and we have to be prepared to back off. We're mindful of the potential consequences that come with with increasing our exposure to this level, and we're prepared to back off or use our alternative terrain options if things aren't what we're expecting. And the last mindset we have is time it early. This is a mindset specific to the use of prior to incoming storms or during spring-like conditions. Here, we anticipate low hazard early, but conditions will significantly deteriorate during the day. Our plan considers that rain or radiation, warm temperatures, incoming snowfall, or new winds can increase hazard and result in heightened avalanche risk later in the day. We recognize that it can be complex to predict these interactions between weather and mountains, and we agree to build a margin of error by starting early and returning early and being out of harm's way with time to spare. So now that we've kind of looked at that, we think of these as something we can all agree on as a group and we hold ourselves to. Let's start using those. We're going to return to our scenarios, and they're going to be the same as the first one, except for we're going to have more opportunity to discuss this in the chat. And we're also going to apply these mindsets as a tool for making decisions. We'll build context again by outlining the conditions available in the forecast in MIN, and then we'll choose a mindset and use it to inform our terrain selection for riding for the day. Also, we'll be stopping. There'll be time for the chats, and there'll kind of be at least 2 points per each one where I'll be asking a bit of questions and discussing our answers. So let's dive right into scenario 1. As we look at the pages of the avalanche forecast, we see that today danger is high, that large avalanches are very likely, and that very large avalanches are likely. There's been a lot of new avalanches, there's tons of new snow, and even more is coming. We see that there's a blue dot, so we decide to check what this group saw on the MIN. Looks like this group had a pretty epic powder day, but they were also pretty cautious, and they stuck to mellow terrain, and they still triggered a small avalanche. It's some pretty awesome information, and I'm really glad this group shared it because it's going to be useful in kind of determining what our mindset is going to be. So with that in mind, what does that tell us about the riding conditions? I mean, I think my picture gives it away, but it sounds like it's going to be pretty deep, right? My coworker calls this the accumulation station. I mean, 60 centimeters of snow already and another 40 on its way. Riding is going to be all time. And if the heavy snowfall and whiteout conditions don't make it hard enough to see, there's going to be foggy goggles, face shots, snow crammed into everything, and probably some epic stucks and a fair amount of shoveling if you're riding with someone like me. So now that we have the avalanche, weather, and riding conditions, what do you guys think our group mindset is? Let me know just kind of one word, just pick or 3 words, pick one of these mindsets and just let me know in the chat. I'll give you guys a few minutes here to think about it and throw some answers in. So right off the bat, I see keep it mellow. Yeah, we have a check it out. Mellow, mellow. Awesome. Yeah, keep them coming. If anyone else has anything they want to throw in. All right. Yeah, look like you guys are all on the same page. For me, I'm going to go with keep it mellow. I have a high confidence that there is high hazard. That other group played it safe and still almost landed in hot water. So I'm going to be sticking to really low consequence terrain, utilizing my safe travel habits and keeping a wide margin for error. But I'm pretty sure I'm still going to be having an awesome time. So based on a mindset of keep it mellow, which it seems like largely we agreed, where are we going to ride today? A or B? I'll give you guys a quick chance to throw up some answers again. So yeah, it looks like we got a bunch of B's rolling in. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Seems like we're all in agreement. So because there's very large avalanches likely, even though the terrain at the bottom of the bowl in picture A is low angle, these big avalanches could run far out into their runouts. So I don't think that being under those paths is a good place for today, especially with a mindset like keeping it mellow. Rather than exposing myself to that overhead hazard, I think I'm going to go dangling through the timber and enjoy the deep snow among the trees. That said, we are going to have to be cautious that the trees we are riding are less than 30 degrees on a day like today, because even small avalanches in open trees could have high consequences if we consider that hitting those trees in an avalanche could be a terrain trap. So that was good. Seems like we're kind of all getting the idea. So let's look at another set of conditions. We're going to pop here into scenario 2. So as we flip through this one, there's considerable danger. Wind slabs expected to form later at upper elevations. And there's no new reports of avalanches. It's going to be sunny. The weather has been stable lately. But calm conditions will likely give way to increased winds later in the day. It seems like this snowed a bit last week, but only about 15 centimeters. Again, we decided to click that blue dot and get some information on the min. And I should point out that while it would definitely be ideal if we could just always click on mins and have posts for us, it isn't always the case, but we could all work on changing this if we just get in the habit of posting one after our day out. This group made some good use of the travel conditions. They went far and wide without seeing any new avalanches. The weather yesterday was calm and clear. It seems like the new snow is still clinging to all aspects. So you can see here they're on the windward side of these ridges, but they're still enjoying just a kind of 10 centimeters of fresh. So given what we've read, what we've seen, what's the riding going to be like? Does anyone want to kind of put a couple of guesses in as to what we might see? Just give 1 second if anyone wants to hazard a guess on what it is. We'll get to mindset in a second, but maybe we'll just start with finishing out the conditions, because right now we've discussed our avalanche conditions, or oh yeah, there's a good one, morning or afternoon, right? But yeah, right now we've got our avalanche and our weather conditions, and we're just trying to kind of round out that holistic approach and get some riding conditions. It hasn't snowed much lately, but with the dusting from this week, it sounds like it's going to be hero snow, right? Easy travel and moving and lots of moving around. I expect it'll be good visibility for both riding and avalanche conditions will be best in the morning before the wind starts stripping the ridges and loading slopes. In the afternoon, those high areas are going to be totally different. So with those 3 sets of conditions in mind, what do you guys think is our mindset for today? Let's go ahead and just see how many answers we can get on this one. Got some time it early, some check it out. some step it up, check it out, time it early. All right, we're getting quite a mix, right? So one of those things I'm seeing is some step it out, step it up, step it, yeah, step it ups, which I would say is we are getting considerable. So kind of setting that as our whole day might be a little problematic when we start seeing that sharp rise in avalanche conditions. But maybe one of the options I'm seeing a lot of is check it out. With considerable hazard, no recent avalanche observations, and an expected change in the weather, we could go with check it out due to the check it out mindset. Due to a lack of confidence and go investigating things cautiously, choose some low consequence terrain, and set ourselves up for success another day. Or maybe, like I saw in the chat, we could go with time it early due to the fact that the wind isn't anticipated to form slabs until the afternoon. Remember, the forecast for considerable in this case is for the peak avalanche hazard of the day, which will happen when the wind picks up in the afternoon. In the min, it seemed like things were pretty stable and should be this in the morning. So if we get it early, maybe we could avoid that risk. So with one of those mindsets agreed on, we're going to go through and we're going to pick our terrain one last time. This time, I'll get you to post your mindset that you picked along with A or B for terrain that you'll be riding. We'll just give a quick second to, so yeah, get an A right away. Do you want to tell me also, Chris, what your mindset is that goes with those? Yeah, A, check it out. Time and early, check it out. Lots of A's. All right. Just a couple seconds. I see a couple more people are typing. A, time it early. Okay. So one of the things that we might see is that what you pick for a mindset has a direct influence on which terrain you might choose for the day. If you went with check it out, then A has a lot of great options to limit your exposure, to avoid the avalanche problem, and to gather information. There's small slopes, tree riding, sheltered areas, and good views into the higher consequence terrain in which to get an idea of what's going on without exposing ourselves. But maybe if we went with that time it early, then B looks like it's going to be a lot of fun in hero snow, right? We could go play in the steep terrain while hazard is lower and duck out to alternative terrain later. We'll just have to watch really carefully the weather and retreat to the mellow terrain as soon as the wind picks up and well before any slabs start to form. Hopefully that kind of resonates. So yeah, as you can see, a direct impact when we pick or cling to a mindset, it also helps us define what's available. And then I wanted to go through the trip planner on avalanche.ca. It can be found under the resources tab. And yeah, there's a link up there already for you. We know that the mindset starts early in our trip planning, but we don't all have pictures of every piece of terrain we want to go to. Furthermore, figuring out what riding is like on FatMap, Gaia, Caltopo, whatever maps you use, it can be tricky. So I just wanted to go over the avalanche terrain exposure scale or AITS rated terrain on the trip planner under kind of like runs at a ski hill. Avalanche terrain is broken into 3 ratings. Green or simple terrain has many options to reduce or eliminate exposure. Blue or challenging terrain has options to limit exposure with careful route finding. Black or complex terrain has minimal options to reduce exposure. It sounds pretty familiar, right? It sounds a lot like what we talked about in mindsets. Check it out, avoid and investigate, keep it mellow, careful route finding, and safe travel habits, right? And step it up, plain and terrain with few options to reduce risk. I'm not saying that all blue is a good fit for keep it mellow, or that you should be in complex terrain just because you decided to step it up. This is just another tool that we can use from the comfort of our own home to sort through our options in the early planning stages and to help pick the right terrain for the given conditions. Also, These ratings are available for most popular riding areas, from the Renshaw and Allen Creek up in the Robson Valley to Frisbee Ridge in Revelstoke and the Brandywine Valley in Whistler. You should actually, now that the link is up, you should go check it out after the talk and see if your favorite zones are included in the trip planner. And finally, I just wanted to come back to the daily process to end the talk. We've been talking about planning your day, matching terrain to conditions, and incorporating a terrain mindset to help keep yourself in check. It's worth reviewing the daily process we talked about earlier and reminding ourselves how these things fit into the overall process we're trying to establish when you go out riding. Based on the forecast, you can start to plan your trip. This is the point where you start to visualize where you might be able to go or where you don't want to go. Is it a day to step it up or to keep it mellow? Once you get to the parking lot, you can reevaluate based on what you see in person. This is the verify conditions point. As a matter of fact, verify conditions, use good travel habits, and evaluate slopes go hand in hand when you're out there riding. In our world, we make thousands of mini calculations to make sure conditions are what we originally thought they would be. Much like being in tune with our machine, how our machine is running, or how the snow feels under the track of your sled. Watch for changes and be prepared to dial back to a plan B if you have to. Finally, reflecting on your day is something that may be as simple as being like, hey, wasn't that a good effing day? Or maybe it's kind of gets when you get stuck wondering, well, that was different than I thought it would be. Reflecting is probably something you do with your buds out for a beer as you're telling stories and swapping about the day. But maybe we could, or maybe ideally, we could summarize our thoughts about our day and those reflections on the conditions into a min post. Remember that simple little information had made a difference in our understanding of conditions for the scenarios? Well, we could pass that on, right? You don't have to share your secret spot. You don't have to be a professional and do all the tests and jargon. Just share a little info about what you saw and did. Not only does it help our forecasters get it right, it'll help others make good decisions. So, in summary, I just want to kind of wrap this up, but always plan your trip. Planning helps you anticipate conditions as well as what terrain may be appropriate for conditions or the ability of your group. Match terrain to the conditions. I mean, I've been going over that all night, but terrain. Conditions change, but the terrain remains the same. It's a constant. So choose terrain you know is safe based on the current conditions. And remember, it's always better to err on the side of caution. Know where not to go. Try to understand where the problems may be lurking so you can avoid these places. Knowing where not to go will help you know where to be. Choose one mindset for the day. If you do have to change your mindset, limit it to making a change to the more conservative side. And everyone participates. Your group can have a leader, however, everyone has a voice and should be heard. This goes from choosing a mindset to choosing a route to take, as well as discussing the conditions and how to travel through the terrain. As well, make sure everyone in your group understands the risks they're taking throughout the day. And well, that's it for me, at least for the slide portion. Thanks for listening, and thanks to everyone who put stuff up in the chat. I hope there was something there that you can take away, or maybe something that you can try and apply to your next day out on the sled with your friends. Maybe we can have those discussions as a group and incorporate that into our planning process. And maybe I'll see you out there sometime this season. I do try to get around. Thanks.
Thanks, Ben. That was super helpful. It was a great presentation. It was so useful to be reminded about mindset before we get anywhere near the snow for this year. So thank you so much for that. Did anyone have any questions just before we move on to the wrap-up portion? There was nothing in the Q&A box, but I just wanted to make sure that we were all good. Oh, actually, we do have a question. We have a question on how wind contributes to avalanche risk.
So if we consider avalanche as a factor of being like overcoming a weakness in the snowpack, wind loads slopes more rapidly than snowfall can. It can actually load slopes at a rate of 3 to 5 times faster than snowfall. And so when we consider that massive amount of snow that can be placed on a slope, it makes those slopes that much more touchy. And sometimes those areas have lingering problems long after the storm slabs have healed. I hope that is what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I don't think we have any more questions. Thanks so much. I appreciate the talk. It was great. And it's really good as well to remember that actually some of the best days can be in simple terrain. Like we don't have to be going hard every time to have a great day.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a great time just popping wheelies and playing on little banks if the conditions are, or those powder days, you can have some awesome time on the small slopes for sure when we're waiting for conditions. All right,
Nice.
I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you. So just really quickly to wrap up a couple of things before we move on. If any of you would like a reminder of the daily process after the session tonight, you can find it and loads of other helpful avalanche safety tools in AvCan, which you can find at avalanche.ca. It's free, it's interactive, it's as much fun as we could make avalanche education online, and it's full of good reminders to start the season nice and strong. Avalanche education doesn't start and stop with these webinars or AvCan. The best way to keep learning and to keep your skills honed is to take an Avalanche Canada training course. If you haven't taken any courses yet, the AST1 is going to be the best place for you to start. But if you've already taken the AST1 and you're spending more time in the backcountry, then an AST2 might be for you. There are loads of options as well that aren't a full AST course. Companion Rescue Skills is a great course to take to keep your skills sharp. And if you need some convincing about why that's a good idea, check out the Rescue at Cherry Bowl story, which is also on avalanche.ca. It's an incredible story of a rescue that should not have been possible and lives that were saved because people's skills were sharp. Another helpful course you might want to take is Managing Avalanche Terrain. That one helps give you travel skills, a quick tune-up, and you can take those courses as many times as you like to keep your training sharp. The Avalanche Canada training courses are all run by people who are specifically vetted by Avalanche Canada, and they all follow our world-leading curriculum. So make sure that your instructor is a licensed AST provider or Avalanche Canada training provider if you choose to take a course. We're so proud of the people that we have teaching, and we're sure that there's a course out there that's right for you. Before you move on, we have some prizes. Amy's going to pull some names.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So our prize winners for tonight are receiving some really nice FXR toques. And you can drop us an email at producer@avalanche.ca to claim your prizes. I'll also put that in the chat box. But the prize winners for tonight are Leobov Deligan, Nicole Barbie, and Lafay Meisenheimer. So toques are coming your way, and hopefully that gets you nice and cozy for the upcoming season. Thanks, Sarah.
Nice. Congratulations to you three. We appreciate your interest in avalanche safety. AvCan relies on donations to help keep our programs running, and you can support these essential programs by donating as little as $10. We know that times are tough, but if you can afford it and you would like to help, the link will be in the chat box to donate, or you can use the QR code that's on the screen. Next Wednesday, we have another free webinar. It will be, not next Wednesday. That is incorrect. November 22nd, we have our next free webinar, which is History Repeats. It's geared more towards the out-of-bounds ski community, but there are important lessons in that presentation for everyone. Tell your friends if it'll be interesting to them. Pre-registration for that's required as well. Thank you all for coming out tonight and showing an interest in avalanche safety. We hope you enjoy your winter in the backcountry, safe from avalanches. Good night.